Hello and welcome to another Unity tutorial. I'm Tristan from Dustworks. Today I'm going to be showing you how to create an advanced camera. So as you'll see here, this is the basic simple follow camera that I created in a previous video, which you will see now. If this is all you want, then you can go there. It's a lot simpler, but today I'm going to be showing you how to add some advanced features to this. The first thing I'm going to be showing you how to add is follow in front of the player. So if we want the camera to lead the player and give them a better idea of what's coming when they're moving left or right, then you'll want this on your camera. The next thing I'm going to be adding is an advanced follow. So instead of simply interpolating towards the player, I'm going to be doing something a little bit more complicated, which will cause it to so you can't see the difference unless so with this off, if I go down in the pit and get killed, you'll see the camera like very jerkily goes back to me. If I turn this on and I go in the pit, you'll see the camera speeds up first before it goes, and then it kind of has a little shake at the end as if a human is holding the camera. So a little nice effect. I can lower that to emphasize it. Now it's got a nice shake. And then finally, the third thing, you may or may not want this, it kind of depends on your game, but it's ignore jump. So with this off, it's going to move with me, and as you saw before, it's going to move down with me as I go into the pit, which isn't necessarily what you want. In a lot of games, you want the camera to move up only when the player is grounded. So for example, I might want, if my game is mainly on a level playing field, I might not want the camera to follow me every single time I jump, because that could make the player get nauseous, and not see what's going on as well. So now it'll only change elevation when I do, and then also it'll make our pit fall feel a lot better, because now I actually fall into the pit, which is nice. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be showing in this video. Let's get right into it. Create a new C# script. I'm going to call mine camera follow tutorial. You'll probably just call yours camera follow. Oh, I'm basically just going to go line by line for my camera follow and show you how it all works. So let's start with the variables. We've got quite a few of them. So first, if you want these to be toggleable like I do, you can copy these variables. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then also, so this is to make all of those features toggleable, which you might want. Then you have the player component, or the player transform, which you'll need in order to follow them. The distance in front of the player is how far in front of the player the camera will follow. Direction change speed is basically if I change direction, how fast should the camera move to the other side of me. Follow speed is how fast it follows, and then stabilization speed. Lowering this will make the camera less stable, so when I move it'll shake more, and take a second to stabilize. So those are your variables. Then we have some working variables. The current offset, that'll be the offset from the center, so when I'm looking in front of the player, I'll need that. The current target position and the current facing, so what direction the player is facing, either 1 or -1. If not, okay, close that, that's what I need it. So start function is pretty simple. Just setting the target position to default to the player position. Next up, let's start with the advanced follow. Let's get that. Put that in your update function. So we're going to set the target position to the player position for now. We're going to be changing that later when we add the other features, but for now we're just going to do that. So first you're going to need to get the vector to the target. So the vector to the target is basically target position minus my position, and you'll probably remember this from the simple follow video if you watch that. That's just how vector math gets it. Take the target minus the position, see the vector from the position to the target. So here you'll see the difference between advanced follow and simple follow. With simple follow, we're just adding that vector times delta time to the position. With our advanced follow, we're actually using physics in order to move the camera. So first off, you're going to want to make sure that your camera has a rigid body on it, which it probably won't because you probably didn't have a reason to add a rigid body to your camera before. So just add component rigid body 2D. Make sure you don't do normal rigid body. That's for 3D and it'll screw things up. So yeah, rigid body 2D, make it dynamic. You're going to want to make it mass 1, linear drag 0, gravity. Make sure you set the gravity scale to 0. That'll be 1 by default. And then make sure you set interpolation to interpolate instead of none. Otherwise, it'll be janky. And everything else is fine. Probably set this to never sleep, though it probably won't make a difference. Next up, so once you've got a rigid body on your camera, you're going to add force to that rigid body. So add the vector to the target, and like I said in the other video, the vector to target includes the distance from the object to the target. So this is going to add more force if the thing is farther away, which is what we want, and then multiply it times the follow speed. And the reason we do this instead of just adding to the position over time is because if you add force, that'll make the camera accelerate up to the speed instead of just being automatically just go to that speed immediately. So if the player say teleports because say they died, the camera won't just like snap to the really quick speed. It'll accelerate to that speed over time. And then finally, if you just have this, the camera's gonna like shake non-stop. It's not gonna stop. So what you want to do is subtract. This one's a little weird. Get the rigid body's velocity and subtract that same velocity times delta time times the stabilization speed. Now, basically what we're doing is, so if the velocity is say 15, then it'll subtract 15 times delta time, which is like a tiny decimal, times stabilization speed, so it'll subtract like 0.5 or something. And we want it to be more with more velocity, because that way, if the camera is really fast, then we want it to stabilize faster. Otherwise, it'll just keep shaking back and forth really quickly. So that's basically what this does. Okay, the next thing we're going to be adding is the follow in front of the player effect. Which is all this. Actually, let's start with... let's just get it all. Okay. So, what is this doing? First of all, we're checking if we want to follow in front of the player with that boolean we set earlier. If we are following in front of the player, so this part is the longest part, but it's pretty simple. It's actually the simpler part. If the input of the horizontal is greater than 0, we're setting facing to 1. If it's less than 0.1, negative 0.1, we're going to set facing to negative 1. Don't set facing to 0 if this is 0. We don't ever want facing to be 0. It should always be either 1 or negative 1. If the player stopped, then we want the facing to just remain whatever the player used to be. You might already have facing on your player component. If you do, you can just use that. I'm doing it this way because I'm assuming nothing. So this is how you get facing. Next is the actual grunt of it. So we're going to have a goal offset that we're going to interpolate to. So the interpolation is going to work similar to the follow, again, that I showed you in a previous video. So we're going to set the goal to be facing, which is 1 or negative 1, times the distance in front of the player. So it's either going to be like, so say it's 7, it's going to be 7 or negative 7, depending on what direction the player is facing. So then we're going to interpolate the current offset towards that with the same follow algorithm we've been using. Just take the goal minus the current, and this works for floats just as well as it does for vectors. It's going to get you the difference between these, just like how numbers work. Times time.delta time times direction change speed. And that's what you want there. I generally like to interpolate most things. You can use this for a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be changing position. Like and it just makes things smoother. It just makes things move a little bit smoother. It's nicer. And then obviously if this is off, then we're just going to set offset to 0. And then in order to use this, basically we're going to set the target position X value. So we're going to remove this guy. We don't want that anymore. So we had this placeholder thing before we just set it to the player position. We don't want that anymore. Now we're going to set the X value. So first we're setting the X, and then we'll set the Y. The X value is going to be equal to the player's X value plus our current offset that we've created. Next up is the ignore jump. So if the player is grounded or ignore jump is off, we're going to set the Y value to be the player's Y value. So basically, this is what should be happening most of the time, but if the player isn't grounded, then we're not going to do this. And that's basically what this is doing. If you don't have a grounded function on your player, so grounded basically means the player is touching the ground. You should already have one if your player is able to jump without jumping infinitely. Whatever you're using to make sure your player is on the ground and before they're able to jump, just use that. If you don't have a grounded variable, then just ignore this feature, and I will be showing you how to do grounded to detect grounded in a future video. I'll link that right now if that exists already. But yeah, if you don't have a grounded on your player, then just ignore this for now. You'll just have to put off this feature for a bit. So yeah, that's the entire thing. So now we can test it one more time. Gonna remove camera follow and add camera follow tutorial, which is literally the exact same script, but that's fine. I'm going to activate all of these. We're going to drag our player into the player variable. We are going to leave these as they are, that's fine, and let's see if it works. And as you can see, we've now made that exact same advanced camera. Cool. Hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, etc. We are an indie game company, and we create these videos as a way to try to reach out to our audience. Be sure to comment any requests if you have something that you don't know about Unity and would like to start knowing. Ask me, and I might teach it to you.